I would like to welcome everyone. You can hear me okay? So our last session of the day. Let me just double check. We'll just say we're going to start session 3D with the Traditional Food and Food Security Initiative at Aleutian Pribilof Islands Association. How could I forget the islands? And so Sue, I can go ahead and turn it over to you. Are you going to be the first speaker? Or Tracy?
Actually, Sarah Dushkin's gonna start the presentation off for us. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'll just try to get you guys spotlighted as you come on.
Can you hear me okay?
You sound good.
Awesome. I will go ahead and start, and you can see my screen all right. Awesome. Well, my name is Sarah Dushkin. I'm the Wellness Program Coordinator with the Aleutian Pribilof Islands Association. Sorry, I'm having a hard time navigating both here. Screens. So as part of our work plan through our wellness strategies for health, we are working on promoting healthy food choices through the community stores in Atka, Nikolski, and St. George. We hope to continue to work with our community stores in introducing and promoting healthy food options in future projects as well. Next screen. So we started the process of this project with connecting with local stores and gave them an overview of our project. From there, the store managers sent in their inventory lists, in which we collaborated with a nutritionist to determine what type of healthier food samples to send to our communities. We then will purchase samples and send the samples to the community stores with promotional flyers and a pre-postage postcard survey, and then compile the results of the survey and share the results with the local stores. So based upon the feedback from the nutritionists and comparing various options, we chose to promote food should taste good, sweet potato tortilla chips. And then again, we'll gather data from the survey, communicate these results with local stores, and then continue to work with communities and stores in future projects. And I will hand it over to Sue.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I'm just going to step back just for a minute. I probably should have at the very beginning maybe opened up and just introduce the fact that what everyone's hearing today is going to be sort of a collection of different projects that are happening at the Aleutian Pribilof Islands Association. My name is Sue Unger and I'm the wellness lead. And everyone on our presentation today is involved in some project at APIA that has some connection with food. And so we have tried to integrate health and nutrition in a lot of our different projects, and we're beginning to create more of an introduction of food security throughout our project planning too. So a lot of our projects, whether they're about traditional foods, cancer prevention, diabetes, there is like a connection that we're making with health and nutrition, food, obesity prevention. So I just wanted to kind of provide that overview as you hear some of the different projects that we're doing at APIA. One of our newer projects is funded by the USDA, and it's this Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant that we were very fortunate to get in fall of 2020. I want to introduce Dr. Freed, who's going to kind of co-present with me from the UAA Institute for Circumpolar Health Studies. And Dr. Freed's a partner on this project with UAA. There are many people that are also from APIA besides myself that are working on this project, including Tracy Stewart, Robin Burnside, Courtney Edwards, and others have been participating in this as we kind of navigate the process that we're going to go over a little bit. But we also have some other partners on the bottom there. You can see APIA, our logo, and ICHS, UAA's Institute of Circumpolar Health. But Alaska Village Initiatives has also been a partner in writing this grant and also implementing it. And so we have several people that we've collaborated with at Alaska Village Initiatives. And the importance of the partnership, there's a couple different partnerships when we talk about this grant. One, there's like a project team that we work together to help implement this grant. And so we all bring kind of a different expertise to the table. APIA has good experience working with the tribes in our region. We do good wellness and health and cultural outreach with our communities. Our partnership with Alaska Village Initiatives provides some of that technical ag support, greenhouse gardening, education, and things like that. That's an important aspect that AVI brings to the table. And Dr. Freed's participation and role is, in food assessment, development, implementation, aggregation of data, summarizing data. So we all play an important role as a project team, as do our project partners, which are our tribes in the region. Next slide, please. So this grant from USDA is 2 years, and we walked into it with two goals. One of our goals is to understand the local food system, and we have 13 tribes in our region, which who live in 10 different communities. And so we're looking at those, we're assessing kind of the food security barriers and assets in our communities at the local level to really understand what that means at a regional level for food security. So some of that local data is helping to inform some regional information and how we make those next steps. So another goal is to begin planning and designing that regional food system through those partnerships that are being developed. And, there's new project partners that are being developed all the time. So that's another kind of big goal of our grant. Next slide, please. So why do we need it? Geez, the interesting thing is this grant was written like right on the precipice of COVID, for one. I was thinking back to that today, and COVID kind of surfaced in March of 2020 starting in a big way. We were just kind of thinking about and working on this grant and had all these other reasons why it was important to work on these partnerships and build these partnerships for food security in our region. It only became stronger as the past year and a half, proceeded as to why we needed to do this. When we see some of the barriers happening with the food supply chain, the cost of, even our postage system and the reliance on, for example, Amazon Prime products for shipping food, all sorts of different issues became apparent in our supply chain system during the last year and a half, even more so. So, a big reason why we're doing this is to improve access to quality foods. And, thinking of food security or food sovereignty, not just like having more food, but having like nutritious food available. And when we're looking at access to quality food, we're looking at it from several different lenses, whether it's traditional subsistence foods, gardening, greenhouses, or foods from the store. We're looking at it from all of those lenses, and with the goal of, we want to make sure we have access to quality foods and improve the current access. Some of the Sarah went over with looking at the stores, that's a big component of that. So that's been integrated in another program to improve access to quality foods at some of our local stores. Another big goal for this project is to improve those partnerships at the local and regional level. And that's really the foundation of this grant. USDA Regional Food Systems Partnership grants are divided into planning grants and implementation grants. And we're kind of in the middle or closer to the end of a planning grant. And we're trying to figure out, who are the partners? How do we work together to better understand what our barriers are and what our priorities are to move forward? So the grant is really about increasing communication about these issues at the local level, but also at the regional level. So we've done that. We've done some good engagement, and Dr. Fried will talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things we've done is in some of the communities where we've done food security assessments, there's been dialogue of engaging the communities in those local food assessments and talking about food security in different ways. And then another reason why, this is needed is it's really the foundation for decision making based on both Western evidence or the data we collect and traditional knowledge that is collected or is there. So it's going to help us understand, like I said, some of the priorities of where to go next. I mean, there may be a lot of information about barriers and assets, but our program is helping to collect that as more concrete data to help inform future needs. So, okay, next slide, please. So we have kind of a project workflow that we set out for in this grant with the project timeline of October 2022, what would be like the end of September, but we are hoping to extend our timeline out a little bit to maybe include more communities in the process. But here's sort of an outline of what we're doing. And Dr. Fried will touch on each one of these, like little arrows is kind of a different part of the process. But an interesting kind of thing as an overview of what's happened. We did propose a certain way to achieve our project goals, to better understand what's happening at the local and the regional level by doing local food security assessments, trying to create core survey questions that could be aggregated to really understand some of these responses at a regional level too. But, with COVID greatly affected our project workflow hugely. And in as much as like we have a project team that the intention was to go out into our communities, implement these surveys in conjunction with like a community meeting or, in a way that the community would have liked us to. But, over the last year, a significant part of our project was tied up in travel to do this. And we haven't been able to do it except for in the community of Onalaska where we were able to go out and implement the survey. So it kind of took a different turn. We had to be creative about it. And fortunately, with our project partners, we've been able to accomplish some of working and contracting with our tribes to implement and do the data collection. So in a way, I mean, there's been some positive out of that. So we've had our communities doing some of the collection of their own data. Some training needed to be involved in terms of collecting data while also handling a hard copy of the survey and, seeing other people's data. It required some human subjects training through the university. So because we're under an institutional review board. So there, I can say there have been some positives in a way. It's been bumpy and there's been barriers, and our barriers have definitely slowed us down, but I don't like to look at it all in a negative way. There have been some positives too. I'm gonna stop there, and like Dr. Fried will, like I said, go over some of the steps that we've gone through. in our project over the last year and a half. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sue. I can definitely go by Ruby here. I think we're all among friends. So I just wanted to kind of go a little bit more in depth into what we've been doing for this grant. It's a multifaceted grant that's really exciting, and I think truly engaging with communities in ways that is not, extractive. We're working with partners in order to have a core survey within our local food assessments that is consistent across different communities. But then we've worked diligently and with our partners in the community to develop community specific questions as well in order to serve various different existing projects or ones that are kind of just developing now, or answering questions like, why aren't people utilizing greenhouses in the way that we thought they would? So in that way, I think this is truly a great collaboration between multiple partners on both the institutional level, but of course, within community. So I think that that's one of the things that I like the most about this grant. I can go to the next slide and I'll get a little bit farther into the data collection aspect of things. So like I said, we're coordinating with local partners, and this is all going through the University of Alaska IRB approval process in order to make sure we are following appropriate ethics. And like I said, our surveys include core questions about access, barriers, changes that people have noticed over the last 5 years or so, potentially due to climate change or other things that are affecting access to especially subsistence foods or traditional foods in communities. We have already completed 2 community assessments in Nikolski and Onalaska, with getting pretty good response rates on those. And as Sue was saying, we collected on data in Onalaska in both in person as well as online, and we had those surveys translated into both Spanish and Tagalog as well, in an effort to kind of get a broader representation within the survey results. And Nikolski, we had 8 respondents, but considering there are 24 adults in Nikolski, that's a pretty good survey response rate. We are currently now working with St. Paul and APIA and St. George, who've already all decided on their community specific questions. St. Paul, for example, is thinking through some ideas of selling reindeer at the local store. So we're asking questions about pricing and types of meat availability, things like that. And we are also in the process right now, just hot off the press, to be working with Sandpoint as well. And False Pass is following after Sandpoint. I think I can go to the next slide now. So we are in, so it's kind of, it looks like a linear process, but really we're kind of doing almost all of these things all at the same time. Right now we're doing some data analysis for Onalaska and Nikolski, which includes just simple summary analysis, but also some qualitative analysis of the open-ended survey questions. That's a little bit more complex, especially with the 150 or so responses for Onalaska. So really working to get community voices well represented in these findings. We are going to utilize these community findings and existing data and understandings of food systems to kick off and provide the foundation for our regional foods symposium planning, which we're in the deep dark depths of right now, where we're really going to bring people together from multiple communities to really think through a lot of these very complex questions. I can go to the next slide now. So our Regional Food Security and Climate Adaptation Symposium, the first 2 days are going to be focused primarily on food security, and the final day will be on climate change. And for obvious reasons, these made sense to hold together. This Regional Food Symposium is going to really have the primary goal of coming out with some actionable steps, both kind of on the technical aspect of things like providing additional storage, what types of foods do people in Nikolski want in their community shared freezer, those kinds of things. But then potentially kind of larger goals where, you know, coordination for shipping and things like that, that are more answerable on the regional level. And so actually, I can go to the next slide now. This is one of our working visuals that we'll be using during the conference. This is really a participation-based conference. It's not people sitting back and listening to presentations. So we're trying to utilize visualizations and different ways to kind of get people thinking about food security in multiple different ways. Like Sue mentioned, we are focusing on all the aspects of food security, traditional and subsistence foods, gardening and greenhouse, as well as store-bought foods on both the regional and community levels. And next slide. Oh, and sorry, I thought I had added those in this version, but I did not. So our next steps are going to be finish local food assessments in the communities that want to do that, hold the Regional Food Security Symposium and really identify those actionable steps, and seek additional funding for implementation of community and region-based projects. And I did forget to mention earlier that the core survey questions were based on the some food sovereignty questionnaires that have been published, as well as some questions that were developed by Canadian partners and existing Alaska-based studies. So I think we are probably just going on. Okay, questions at the end. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so here's my slides. My name is Courtney Edwards. I'm a health promotion and wellness events coordinator with APIA. I'm speaking on behalf of the Youth and Elders program within APIA. So I've gotten some information from them and I've got to work with them a little bit too. So I have some information to share with you guys today that kind of has to do with what we've been doing that relates to this conference. So as you can see, this one's about the Elders Care Services Division, food security initiatives. So this project is intended to increase capacity and practical experience in agriculture and mariculture while showcasing community members that have been successful in regards to gardening. Through partnership with the University of Alaska Extension Services, we provided 4 scholarships for our community members. So 4 of these community members participated in a Master Gardener's course. And then we were able to have 1 scholarship for a community member that attended the Alaska Seaweed Farm Startup Training Program. And then lastly, APIA has partnered with Heidi Rader, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Rader, from the University of Alaska Extension Services to create a video series, as well as a publication highlighting successful community members that garden within the region that are successful. Next slide. All right, and this one dives deep a little bit more into the elders meal program. So the APIA, you can see this picture, this nice, beautiful picture with her beautiful vegetable. APIA Elder Meal Cook Lily Stam helps maintain the 26-foot geodome. Oops. Okay. Maintains this dome in Nikolski, where she plants vegetables and berries that grow throughout the spring and summer months. Many of these vegetables that are locally grown in the greenhouse are served within the title-funded APIA Elder Congregate Meal Lunch Program. These serve as a vital support to ensure the Elders Meal Program serves fresh vegetables during the times where the weather conditions halt air services and goods from reaching the communities. For more information, if you guys have questions, I put down the contact information for the Elders Program. They do a lot of other stuff other than what these 2 slides could contain. So if you have any questions or want to reach out to them, that is their info below. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit and move to the youth program. I've been working a lot with the youth program, and especially for kind of future events coming up. But this one, so the APIA Youth Services Program, this is kind of a highlight of what's going on right now with them. In 2021, APIA's Youth Service Program was awarded the NB3 Foundation Community Empowerment Grant. This grant allows Native American communities to focus on community-led, culturally rooted programs in one or more of these areas that I listed for here. So increasing opportunities for physical activity, building youth leadership and advocacy, increasing access to healthy and affordable foods, deepening cultural connections. So these are all just really amazing things. The Aleutian Pribilof Regional Community Partners listed down the bottom of this slide were the ones selected to receive the $12,500 to facilitate the NB3 community empowerment core related activities in their respective communities. And then if you would like to see more about the youth program, because obviously we can't fit all of what the great things that they've been doing and will do in the future, you can visit this link I provided, the apia.org youth newsletter. That is like an ongoing newsletter, the Tide Pool Times. And then you can also learn more about this really amazing grant, the NB3 grant here at this link here. And then as well, follow them on Instagram with their little tag right there. And then this last slide is going to be kind of a plug for the Southwest Regional Steering Committee for Health and Resilience. This committee is intended to empower community members living in Aleutian Pribilof Islands and Bristol Bay regions to take part in developing future programs, events related to topics like suicide prevention and other health-related topics. So you're welcome to scan this barcode here for more information, and members are needed. So if you're interested, take a look at that, and then the email right here for Olivia for more information. And thanks for letting me share.
Hello, I think this is our last slide. My name is Tracy Stewart. I'm the Traditional Foods Program Coordinator at APIA. And one of the additional projects that we're working on, so as Sue and Ruby had mentioned, we have a USDA grant right now that we're working on understanding and building our food systems and food security at a local and regional level. But we're also collaborating with the Alaska Food Policy Council on a statewide level to understand the food systems and support food security at a state level. And so APIA was elected as one of the project node organization leaders from across the state. And we were really excited to be a part of this project. As I have on the slide, one of the main project goals is to connect localized food system organizations to create a statewide network of regional nodes. And again, APIA trying to represent the Aleutian and Pribilof Islands region at that state level. And so a couple of objectives that we've been tackling with this specific project is really improving kind of networking and communication with all the different regions across the state, working to identify assets, barriers, and ways that we can support one another. And then ultimately trying to create a 10-year food security action plan. And so the Alaska Food Policy Council has broken that up into a couple of different phases. And so in phase 1, we had several team members from APIA, the Traditional Foods Program, people from the Wellness Program, a few members from our Elders Program. We've all been participating in this. And the first phase was sitting on several webinar series where we did a lot of kind of education and a lot of opportunity to, again, network and connect. I know, speaking for myself personally, just sitting on those for the last year, I've made a ton of connections with people who are working in the food system and in the food world in Alaska. So I definitely think that it did its job. Phase 2 is something that we're doing right now too, which is trying to create a networking survey. And so a few folks from APIA have contributed to that survey, and it sounds like hopefully we'll start to disseminate that a little bit more broadly. And then in phase 3, this is pretty exciting because this is coming up for us. As Sue and Dr. Freed had mentioned, we have a symposium that's coming up, and it's a 3-day symposium. And as they mentioned, the first 2 days are going to be focused on food security. And in the second day, what we're doing is we're actually going to integrate one of our deliverables for this project, which is a food asset mapping workshop. And so we're going to host that in the midst of our symposium. And so that's coming up next month. So we're really excited to do that. And then all of this work, again, ultimately leading into us being able to help contribute to this greater statewide action plan. And so that will be coming down the pipeline as well. I know we are at our time, and so hopefully I'm presenting next. I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper into some of the projects that we have going on, specifically in the Traditional Foods Program, but hopefully we can give a little bit of time for any questions that folks might have for our greater APIA team at the moment.
That's fine, Tracy. We can go ahead and take questions for Tracy right now. As you guys are switching your presentations out, if there's any questions, I will check that here. Tracy, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now, so if you'd like to go ahead to the next presentation, that would be wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, it looks good. Okay,
perfect. So again, just briefly introduce myself again. My name is Tracy Stewart. I'm the Traditional Foods Program Coordinator at APIA. And so just using a little bit of extra time right now to kind of dive into some of the projects that we've been working on in the Traditional Foods Program. And so really focusing in on one of our main resources that we've been building on, and that is Qaqamiigux. And I'll get into some of the history and background with that. And so we're really working to sustain the legacy of the Unangax harvest and our traditional food and traditional practices from the Aleutian and Pribilof Islands region. So I always like to just give a glimpse. I know most of us are all local Alaskans here, so we know where this region is, but just for a visual context, a lot of our rural villages and communities are rural and off the road system, and the Aleutian Pribilof Islands is definitely off the road system, so we are very much remote and rural. I'll share a little bit about our Unangax culture. And so we have about 13 communities spread across the Aleutian and Pribilof Islands region, and it is home to the Aleut, or our traditional name of Unangax people. Our traditional language is Unangax. And everything that we do, not only in just our communities in our region, but something that's a big mission for us, obviously, at APIA, is to make sure that we're upholding and integrating all of our Unanga values and all of the projects and all of the things that we're doing. And I like to point out here, something that I think is really interesting is the people in the sea. I'm not sure if y'all can, when I share screen, if you can also see my cursor here, but in our brand here, we have this red dot, and that is representational of the people. And you'll see a blue wave that goes around the people, and that represents the sea. And so being islanders and being so much surrounded by the sea, it is a big part of our culture and who we are as people. And it really is part of what makes subsistence lifestyle such a big thing for us. I mean, like I mentioned, we're off the road system, we're very rural, we're very remote. And so deeply ingrained into our culture is being able to live off the land, and also specifically being able to live off the sea. So to jump into Qaqamiigux, I want to do a little bit of a background, and I'm really glad that Sue Unger is on the call today. So please, Sue, she has a big essential piece of the background in this. And so please feel free, Sue, to jump in at any time, and she'll be on the call as well later if you have any questions. Because I've been at APIA for about 6 years now. So this started before my time. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of a brief background. So obviously still doing traditional foods initiatives prior to this, but a big one that started Qaqamiigux was a CDC grant that Sue had, and it was from 2008 to 2013. And it was primarily focused on diabetes prevention and obesity prevention through nutrition and access to healthy traditional foods. And so some of the main goals were creating cooking demos and having demonstrations in several of the communities throughout the region. Each year, each summer, we also have annual culture camps in several of our communities. And so for this particular grant, we focused on supporting the traditional foods portion at our urban Unanga culture camp that's hosted here in Anchorage. And then we also have health fairs throughout the year, throughout the region. And so we hosted cooking demos through this grant as well, supported our elders meals and our elders tea parties. And then a big one here that kind of takes us to where we're going next is one of the deliverables that was set forth was we wanted to create a sustainable resource guide for the traditional foods that are found in our region. And so that deliverable led to Qaqamiigux, our book, the textbook that Sue was super instrumental in making happen. And this was, I don't know if Sue lovingly calls this her baby, but I feel like I call it her baby, because this took a lot of work and is something that's really special and valuable in our region. And so she conducted interviews with over 30 different elders, community leaders, traditional food experts. And one of the things that was also really hard for us in our region is we had archival libraries full of different resources, whether it was books, reports, archival audios, research papers, but everything was kind of spread out. And so consolidating that so that we had it in a one go-to place. And so putting all that together to create our Qaqamiigux textbook, the traditional foods and recipes from the Aleutian and Pribilof Islands. And I have on here the translation for Qaqamiigux in Unangam Tenu, and it translates to hunt or fish for food, collect plants, essentially subsistence. And so within Qaqamiigux, what we did is went through all of the main food groups that we find and that we use within our region. And so marine mammals, fish, birds, caribou, reindeer, plants and berries, tidal foods. And then the layout of the textbook goes into harvesting, preserving, and preparing. And in the textbook, you'll find, which I think is really interesting, from all of the collection of that data, archival data and interviews, there's historical information of ways that we did that, and also contemporary ways of how to harvest, preserve, and prepare. So a mix of historical and contemporary. Something that is really, really special, I think, and unique about this textbook is the legwork that went into creating the nutritional facts labels for each of these major food groups and major items that we consume. There's also recipes, and then integrated throughout the entire textbook is Unangam Tanu, as well as our Unanga values. I'll show a few screenshots from the book. So as I talked about having some information about harvesting and preparing and preserving, something that was created simultaneously that is in the textbook are these harvest rounds, which I think are super cool and really beautiful, and just highlight the seasonal harvest time for each of our major food groups. And we have two, just because our region is actually so spread out that the harvest times vary for some of these things. And so we have an APIA seasonal harvest round and one for St. Paul as well. So those are found in the textbook. And these were the nutritional facts labels that I was talking about. So each section has this really cool visual that's with it as well. I always love some of these, like the salmon one, where it's just like the small fillet of salmon, and it does a comparison of the omega-3 fatty acids that you get from just a small kind of palm full of salmon versus how much you would have to eat of, let's say, hot dogs or chicken nuggets to get that same nutritional value. So really just highlighting in this book how healthy our traditional diet is and our traditional foods are. And then the nutritional facts labels that break it down as well for each major group. So as I mentioned, there's recipes throughout. I love how some of these kind of give some backstory as well from the cooks and how it was handed down, or what the recipe means to them, or who taught it to them. And so filled with traditional recipes. And again, some of these are kind of contemporary recipes as well, kind of how they've been brought into modern times. And as I mentioned, Unangam Tanu values and Unangam Tanu integrated throughout the entire textbook. And so from the Qaqamiigux textbook, this is where actually, and I believe it's 2016 when I started working at APIA. This is when I came on board and was able to start collaborating with Sue on the Qaqamiigux series. And so she had just gotten a Nota Begay Foundation grant, again, focused on diabetes and obesity prevention, specifically in children. And so what we did is we took the Qaqamiigux textbook and we adapted that into a Head Start curriculum. And again, really wanting to, that textbook is targeted for an adult age. And so this is something that we could bring that information that's in that textbook and present it to an audience that was more from the range of like 3 to 6, kind of preschool, early childcare age. And so I'll talk a little bit about our curriculum. And you can find our curriculum online for free. Each unit is available as well. And so we wanted to structure the curriculum, again, just kind of based off of the textbook as well. And so you'll see here that we have an introduction, and then we have all of our major food groups that we broke down into a different unit, from our marine mammals, fish, bird, caribou, reindeer, plants, and tidal foods. And something that I think that was really one thing that I really enjoyed about working on this curriculum was kind of the development and the planning stage of this was very collaborative. We worked with different departments within APIA. We worked with elders and community leaders, and even down to the artwork that you see is an Unanga artist, Sharon Kay, who contributed to this. And so every step of the way, we really had cultural advisors kind of helping build this and drive which direction each unit went. And so I'll just kind of show you at least one unit that's broken down. And so this is our fish unit. And again, this original artwork from Unanga artist Sharon Kay. And we really wanted it to be kind of very youthful and kid-friendly. And included in the unit is Unangam Tanu. And so a lot of our Head Start programs, so we have I believe at the time that we implemented this, we had 4 open. One of the barriers in our region, unfortunately, is population. And so a lot of times we have difficulty keeping some of our programs and our school doors open just because our population drops. But at the time we had 4 Head Start programs that we piloted this curriculum out to. And so we wanted to continue revitalizing and rebuilding Unangam Tanu, but we also knew that some of our Head Start teachers either didn't speak Unangam Tanu or didn't feel comfortable sharing those lessons. And so something that was contributed by our Cultural Heritage Department are audio card readers. And so each Head Start unit, Head Start program had an audio card reader and had audio cards that they could plug in, and it would do the audio of the Unangam Tanu. So that was one of our kind of creative ways of continuing to teach and pass on the Unangam Tanu language. You'll also see here that each unit has a harvest poster that was part of it, because again, we're talking about sustaining the harvest, the Unanga harvest. Something that came about early on in some of the focus groups that we had were that kids in the next generation were maybe missing that. Like we had how to prepare, or maybe some, like the textbook with a lot of recipes and that information, but we didn't necessarily have, like, maybe we were seeing a gap in how to harvest and where food actually comes from. And so we created these harvest posters to go with each unit and gave discussion question prompts that the Head Start teachers could use to kind of use during circle time and to prompt kids into discussion around harvesting our traditional foods. Again, the nutritional information was adapted from the textbook into this curriculum. And it was brought up in a way so that hopefully our Head Start teachers could easily translate that information where it was adapted for the audience and more appropriate. We also had recipes that were included, and this replaced the healthy snack requirement that was required for each of our Head Start programs. And so we created a recipe using a traditional food that met all the guidelines so that they could replace the healthy snack food that they were required to do with something that included traditional foods. And then we also created activity extensions as well to just give other opportunities for our Head Start teachers to implement traditional foods in other lessons. Coloring books, we had family letters that went home, family recipes that went home, so that again, we could just continue to tie the lesson not only in the classroom, but bring it into the home as well. And then I always love providing this feedback. Like I said, we piloted this, and so we did some evaluation on was the curriculum helpful? Did it do its job? And we evaluated it in several different ways. But one of my favorite feedbacks that we got was from King Cove, and she had mentioned that she had done the fish lesson that week, and she had talked about kind of the protein and the various nutritional benefits of salmon. And she said that later that week, the canine officer had come in to kind of do kind of a show and tell, and had brought the canine in. And the officer was talking about how the dog Faro loved salmon, and that was his favorite food. And the teacher said all the kids got super excited and said, oh, well, that's really good for Faro, and it's going to make him strong because of the protein that's in salmon. And so I always just think that's such a really cute example of really how the knowledge was applied and it was absorbed. And so just an example of hopefully how the curriculum is doing its job. So we had the textbook, we adapted that to a curriculum, and then we had the next level of adaptation. And so that's the project that we've been working on for the last several years. And that is a grant we got through the CDC, and it's a Tribal Practices for Wellness in Indian Country, our TIPWIC grant. And with that grant, what our main goals were to promote traditional foods practices at our culture camps throughout the region. We wanted to preserve our traditional knowledge around traditional foods by documenting this intergenerational learning that happens at culture camps. And then we also wanted to continue to create these sustainable resources. And specifically this time, what we wanted to do was to create short films and field guides. And so We implemented supporting our regional culture camps. Have a couple of photos here from camps throughout the region over the last several years. As I'm sure other people experienced, we had a lot of hiccups with COVID, and weren't able to do camps as normal for a couple of years, but we did do a little bit of some adaptation and some virtual camps. And I think Sandpoint did Camp in a Can, where they did box packages that went out to folks. So we did what we could to continue supporting kind of camp throughout COVID, but specifically our project really just trying to support the traditional foods portion at our culture camp. And so again, while we were supporting these culture camps, what we did was we had professional videographers that went out. Again, I always like to note that this is something that we collaborated with each community with, and definitely had the community on board and their permission to do that. I think sometimes documentation can feel a little invasive, and so this was definitely something that the community wanted. They wanted an opportunity to document their process and to document and preserve. And so definitely had their support on board doing this step. And again, just with that ultimate goal of really preserving our traditional Unanga knowledge around traditional foods. And if you'll see in this picture specifically, we have one of our main elders that is a huge contributor on this project and a lot of projects at APIA, and this is Sally Sweatsoff, and she's teaching the kids out at the ADCA culture camp. She's about to start butchering a seal. So we got all the documentation at the camp. So we had all this amazing footage. And then what we did was we moved into the creation portion. And we were lucky at this stage to hire on internally a media specialist, Chrissy Rose, and she's on the call as well today. So if you have questions for her for this stage of the project, she'll be on to answer some questions as well. So we worked with Chrissy and collaborated to create a film series. And so again, kind of adapting and modeling that same structure from the original textbook, we wanted to create at least one film from each of our major food groups. That was kind of our bare minimum goal. We superseded that goal, which is awesome and amazing. And I think a big piece of that was us being able to hire internally Chrissy and have that media specialist on board. And so I think we had wanted to originally create like 5 films, and we ended up being able to create 10 films. And so we do have some from every single major food group. And in these films, not only do we highlight the food, but again, there's elder stories and historical pieces that are intertwined through it, our values, the Unangamtinu language. And I just have kind of a list and some screenshots of some of our films. We also integrated some of the artwork that was from the Head Start curriculum, because we wanted this to be youth friendly. You know, the textbook was for an adult audience. The curriculum was for preschool, early childcare. And so we wanted to fill that gap age-wise with this film series. And so we definitely wanted it to be targeted for the next generation to really spark their interest and engagement and excitement around traditional foods. So we've got seine fishing, the Aleut, so how to harvest and prepare and preserve chocolate lily, how to butcher a Qaqamiigux, which is reindeer, how to prepare boiled fish head, how to harvest and prepare octopus. We also have butchering Qaqamiigux, the eider duck. One is making salve, medicinal salve from several traditional Unangax plants. The sea lion, we have currently we have one that's on hunting sea lion, and we're actually in the works of making our very last film for this grant. It's over in a couple of months, and so it's our last deliverable we're finishing up, and it's going to be how to butcher a sea lion. So we'll have how to hunt, and then we'll also have how to butcher. We have how to harvest seagull eggs out in Aquitaine. And our most recent one that we've published is how to harvest Bidarki in Atka and Sandpoint. And all of these films you can find on our website as well. And so I'm going to kick it to Robin for just a second. She's going to jump in and just talk about another project that we have that was kind of an offshoot that has developed from this Qaqamiigux textbook as well. Oh, my bad. I had one more slide. Sorry, Robin. This is an exclusive sneak peek. This is in the development stages, but this is the field guides that we're hoping to create that will accompany each of the films. So the 10 films that we have, every single film will have a field guide that will go along with it as well. And so just another sustainable resource that we're trying to create. Sorry about that, Robin.
You're so good. Thanks, Tracy. That was my first time seeing that field guide also, so that's awesome. Hi everyone, my name is Robin Burnside. I'm a wellness program coordinator. And so I get to work with Tracy and Sue and Chrissy also mentioned on some projects. And so we have been working on some nutrition education videos under an ANTHC cancer prevention grant. And this has been a great opportunity to kind of build off of the Qaqamiigux curriculum and to highlight some traditional food using nutrition education. So we wanted this to be connected to a young audience so we could kind of start promoting nutrition education and those healthy eating habits as connected to traditional food and the Unangax culture at a young age. So the videos get a little bit more into nutritional significance of traditional foods and what those specific nutrients do for our bodies in a very fun, youthful manner. Chrissy Rose is really good at animation, and so they're pretty fun. And we got to use some of the art from the Head Start curriculum as well. So I think we can go to the next slide. And let's see, I don't know if we have time or if that video's work, but this is just a little snapshot. We had youth from the region who actually got to narrate our script. So this is Ansley Carlisle, who is the daughter of Amy Carlisle, who is our youth services coordinator, and her family's from King Cove and from the region. So it was really cool. And we have another youth from the region who narrated some of the other videos. So far we've done salmon, berry, sea lion, and seal, caribou, and reindeer. So I don't know, Tracy, do you think we have time? Should we play the video or just leave the screenshot?
I wonder if I'm right, we've got 5 minutes. I wonder if we do open it for Q&A, and if we don't have much, maybe I can come back to the slide and play it.
That sounds great. And yeah, and I just also wanted to say we collaborated with some dietitians on this video. I think I saw Melissa Toolpack is on, and she helped us with this. It was awesome. And some dietitians from ANTHC as well. So this was a fun project and builds off Qaqamiigux. So yeah, thanks Tracy for letting me jump in and show them.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So yeah, the majority of this was really just to highlight some of those resources and projects that have stemmed from that original Qaqamiigux textbook. I always like to put kind of where you can find our program and some of our resources because they can be a little bit hidden. And so you can find us obviously on the APIA website, but we're under tribal services. And then you'll see us under the traditional foods program. And that's where you can find the nutritional facts labels, information, the curriculum is there as well, and all the videos that we talked about as well. And eventually, as soon as we finish up the field guides in the next month or so, those will be on the website and digitally available as well. All right, so that's what I've got at the moment. I will stop sharing and give us, I guess, an opportunity for Q&A for that last portion, or any questions from the previous APIA presentation as well.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Kira and I'm Yupik. So I'm wondering if for the Qaqamiigux textbook, is there any documentation of the methodology and for example, how other Alaska Native groups could follow along the same lines to produce a textbook for their cultural groups?
Yeah, I might kick that question to Sue since she was really instrumental in the development of that original textbook.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a really good question. I kind of was wondering if there was going to be another region that might try to create something similar. And there are some kinds of resources with some similarities, but I mean, I don't really know how to answer that about a methodology. I think there were some really strong pieces of that that were important as it was being produced. And one was just making sure, you know, elders were interviewed and, you know, really tapping into that, making sure there was language incorporated and values. And I mean, there were definitely pieces of that. And for a region, another important part was to try to make sure that, you know, there was some kind of, you know, that we're looking not just at one or two communities, that there was the variety of the whole region was identified in there and different inputs from that. It is very textbooky, and like as a non-native writer of that, I really kept true to exactly with, you know, what resources were being said, and didn't really adapt stuff too much, and like direct quotations and yeah, so I don't know. And I'd be happy to talk with you more about that if you were interested. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. That's a really incredible resource. And I suspect as climate change continues to impact the climates in our various regions, that resources like this are going to be helpful further north. While these wild animals and plants sort of start migrating further north to meet the right climate requirements for their growth.
Great point. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Question. Might be breaking up, but there's time for about one more question. Thank you so much, the group of you, Sue, Robin, Sarah, Courtney, Ruby, and really appreciate all that you've done in the presentation. You guys are doing amazing work down in the Aleutian Pribilof. So much for presenting with us today. So that's the end of, we're getting ready for our break, and then we'll be able to come back at 4:45. You don't want to miss Sarah Lewis from Cooperative Extension. She'll be doing a presentation on don't buy it, make it. And in between then, you can take your break and go over to the silent auction at 32 auction. And, you can also go visit the Hoover website and check out all that's happening over there. Thank you so much.